Over 7 million different animals inhabit our planet.
The kind of what a walrus looks like, this burly-looking seal with tusks. You know what I call it, Angie?
What can they teach us?
And they spend most of their time with other walruses, but it's usually of the same sex.
Many species are in crisis and need your help. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.
Welcome to the All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
Angie, I miss talking to you. We need to start doing our twice a week stuff.
Well, how about 3 times a week?
Yeah, I know that was
like every other day.
Yeah, it was getting a little much, but yeah, we have to get back to the conservation news, and hopefully the next couple of weeks we'll be able to do that. And then also Jesse, get Jesse and Jim back on board because those guys were awesome.
Oh goodness, yes, they were amazing. I definitely look forward to. I need to do an episode with them, but you guys,
yeah.
You have a pretty good dynamic with them.
No, I'm going to set it up. I'm going to set that one up. I'm going to make sure that happens here soon. So we'll get back to the conservation news, and then we have some interviews coming up too. So we'll get back on it. As we're nearing our 1-year anniversary.
I can't even believe it, right?
I know.
And I must say, pretty much every podcast I prepare for, I like better and better and better. It's just I'm having more. Yeah. I didn't think it would ever be possible to have more fun, especially after doing a species of rhino or some of the hoofstock. But for instance, the past 3 days, learning about walruses.
Yes.
Our first,
it was cool. We just talked.
Yeah, our first pinniped.
Yeah.
And
yes.
So it's. I mean, like I said, we're narrowing in on the 1 year mark, but every day feels like a new, fresh day. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And I got to give a shout out to Heidi. She helped me do some research. She's been texting me some cool articles and stuff on them. So it's amazing how people get excited about learning about these animals. And she's been a big help to me.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So pinnipeds, meaning animals with fin or flippers on both their hind feet. I didn't really kind of know that. I always knew pinnipeds.
Well, peds means feet, and a penna, I don't know what a penna means.
Yeah.
But
multi? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's you and Angie. Me and Angie got 30 years of education.
Trust what we say. Why will you pretend?
Yeah. Or, I mean, seriously, I was in college 11 years. And you were in college for 28 years, right? No,
something like that. Yes, there definitely there are a lot of it slowed down there the past couple of years with 2 boys. That was for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't believe you had 2 babies in grad school. I'm just proud of you.
Oh man, I want to go back to vet school and have more babies. It's the best time ever. I don't want to be in the real world working. Jeez.
No way. So seals, sea lions, and walruses. So those are our pinnipeds. And so we're going big. First one, we're going big.
Oh,
it's not the biggest, though.
It's not the biggest.
It's not the biggest. I was surprised.
I was too, actually.
Elephants. Yeah. Elephant seals. The male elephant seals are bigger.
I think there's 2. There must be subspecies, but 2 species of elephant seals that they said are bigger than walruses. But walruses are big and they're iconic, and everybody knows what they look like. So we will describe them in more detail because Chris and I learned a lot of fun facts along the way about their hind feet, about their whiskers, about their blubber,
physiology,
about their male reproductive parts. Stay tuned for that.
Yes, that one. It's funny. Again, my friend Heidi, the physiology about it, and it made me think of Corbin too. So Corbin, if you're listening, this one's for you, bud.
Yeah, you'll probably get some giggles for sure. But everybody knows. I mean, the thing they're probably the most iconic for, right, is those massive tusks.
Yes, ivory. And Angie, I didn't know this. They almost went extinct in the 1930s.
Sure, yeah.
Because of those damn tusks. Stupid ivory.
Which for our listeners, if you're not familiar, same thing with the elephant, but these tusks are basically just enlarged canine teeth. So they're just teeth, but obviously people seek them for many different reasons, which
carving them and stuff,
which did drive them to almost extinction. But they're they're on the rebound, so that is good, but they are still vulnerable by the IUCN, and most likely due to human pressures and, of course, global climate change. Their numbers, the IUCN don't know if they're decreasing because it's so hard to do population counts. But they're assuming that they're going down because of ice being lost in their habitat.
Yeah. We'll talk about that for sure. And then stay tuned, because at the end, I'm going to guess the number of walruses in the largest herd that they've been able to count.
Ooh, that's a fun one.
We will, and where? Yeah, and where do they live? So it's actually pretty amazing. They're really amazing creatures. I think a lot of people, again, we're covering some iconic species lately, like the giraffe and things like that. And a lot of people do know the kind of what a walrus looks like, this burly looking seal with tusks. You know what I call it, Angie? If we go back to episode 32, it looks like a naked mole rat. It's just huge.
It does. I can see that in the face. Once again, I think they have a cute face, especially with those whiskers. It's like smush and totally. The whiskers.
Oh, they're
but
adorable.
Yes, I can. That's definitely the blubber and the kind of the roundness shape of them. I could definitely see that. But they're
just a big sausage.
They're pretty much like a big sausage with the little 4 appendages, and they do they have fur over most of their body, and they can be like, some describe them as light gray to yellowish brown. For me, they're almost just brown in color. I don't know where the gray comes.
Yeah, reddish brown.
Or cinnamon, but some people say light gray.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But the adults can range in color.
Right, and the males are huge. I mean, huge, up to 12 feet or 3.6 meters, and they weigh 4,400 pounds or 2,000 kilograms.
Yes.
They're only beaten by the elephant seal, like we said, and the elephants. So they're really the 3rd largest mammal on Earth as far as weight.
Yeah, Chris, my babies, the rhinos, they can be about 2 tons or 4,000 pounds. So we're talking massive.
Yeah, they're big. And the females aren't quite as big. So you're talking 10 feet long, still big, but 2,800 pounds or 1,250 kilograms. So, but they're huge. They're huge. Well, then and then the tusks, both males and females have them, right?
Yeah, Chris. So both females and males have tusks. Now, I do believe the males are going to have longer, thicker tusks than the females.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we're gonna. Oh, let's wait. We'll save the tusk talk later, because there's some cool facts. Some cool facts.
Yes. I learned a lot about their tusks.
Yeah. There's some really cool facts about them. So these live down near Antarctic, right? The penguins? Right? No, not wrong.
Let's jump about 180.
The other side of Earth. Yeah. So they're all northern hemisphere. These are strictly northern hemisphere mammals. They live in the Arctic or subarctic regions.
Sure. Yep.
And they enjoy temperatures like Florida, right? Like a balmy 5 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 15 C.
No.
Oh my God.
I'm so desperately waiting for fall to come, and it's very slow here. It's about November here before it starts cooling down. But yes, no walruses around here. They are going to be circumpolar in the Arctic, or like you said, subarctic, and they kind of have a discontinuous distribution. And
that's good. That's a good way to describe it.
They're found in relatively shallow continental shelf areas because of their hunting and eating habits, and we'll get to that a little bit in nutrition and why that matters. But they prefer. It's almost like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. They prefer ice that's not too thick, because they don't want to be in the deep water, but they don't want their ice to be too thin, because obviously weighing 4,000 pounds, they would crash through it. So they basically ice just perfect, that they can medium thin, I guess, if you will, or medium sized ice that they can lay on and then have easy access to food. However, as we'll touch on later on the podcast, with weather patterns changing and ice melting, that's harder and harder for them to find. So now they're spending more time on land than probably historically they have.
Yeah, that's a great segue, Ange. the rabbit hole, we always, each of us go down rabbit holes. And I know you were going to bring this up too, just the global warming aspects. And we did talk about that in the polar bear episode way back when we were still cutting our tusks, way back. Hey, I'm learning. You're teaching me. But, reading the studies on this, less sea ice means walruses have really, it affects them in many ways. One is they like to rest on these floats when they're out hunting or gathering food. So less of those means they have to be closer to land, and they're competing with other walruses for food resources.
Sure.
So you're obviously going to impact there. And I know you're going to get to this, but walruses give birth on sea ice. They mate along its edges. So yeah, it's going to have a major, major impact on them. So we see it with the polar bears. We talked about it in reindeer a little bit. And now you have this other species that's going to be dramatically impacted. And that's why I think the IUCN is like, this is bad.
Sure. Bad. Well, and the other thing too with them, they call it hauling out. You'll hear me talk more about in behavior. So it's like hauling oats, but like hauling out of the ice, pulling out of the ice in the water to go on beach. And they do this at different times of the year, depending on the season. But they're doing that more frequently and spending larger times on the shore than they historically would. And there's more of them. And so there's actually seeing incidents of higher death rates because of trampling. So there's so many, not that there's like so many of them, but they'll congregate. And then if they get spooked by something, or with polar bears, now the polar bears are hunting, like they know where they're at. Now they're hunting them. Yeah. So they'll go run to dive in the water, and there's so many of them, and they shouldn't all be there, right? All at the same time. And a lot of them sometimes get trampled. So, which of course the polar bears are very happy about. But yeah, so there's definitely this change is changing some of their behavior patterns, some of their migration patterns, and overall probably their longevity. So it is something that a lot of the walrus. Oh, say that 5 times fast. Walrus researchers. Woo, baby, that's a hard one to say. Yes. Walrus researchers and the IUCN. They're definitely keeping an eye on these guys the best they can, but because of the circumpolar, Arctic, and subarctic distribution, it's a hard species to study. And even with researchers dedicated just to looking at walrus behavior and habitat, they can only study them during certain times of the year.
Absolutely agree. I mean, it's like, even I remember talking to Dr. Aaron Curry, our good friend, and how hard it is to study polar bears, right? Like she was out there and talking about how they go out on the ice, and it's really hard to track. And bless her, because being out there on that ice trying to track polar bears, if I'm not in that big buggy she was driving, no way.
I agree. Yeah,
there was polar bears. Yeah, because you can't see them. They're yellow. We know that their hair color is yellow.
Well, their hair is actually clear. Remember that fact?
That's right. They're clear. That's clear. It was, but underneath yellow, right?
Underneath is yellowish color, and then of course the way that the sun reflects the light and the dirt on them and things like that. Right. Yeah, that's always a fun cocktail party trivia question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have this good infographic. I'm going to try to put it on the show notes, and it's from NOAA, tracking sea ice. So just some data points on that right now, and this is from 2015, so it's actually accelerating. We know global warming is accelerating some sea ice loss. Bering Sea, the trend is about 15 days less of sea ice. The expert opinion is that sea ice has decreased by 50% in the last 20 years.
That's crazy.
Just in the Bering Sea. Yeah. And that's between, the U.S. The Canada, Greenland, 20 days less. They, still watching that there. The Barents Sea. So if we're going the other side of near Russia, down about 20 days. And so around these polar regions, and even in Antarctica, what they're seeing, because in global warming, it's not so much hotter around the equator, right, that we're worried about, which is still happening, with acidification of the ocean, these other things. Right. It's accelerating at the polar regions. Mm-hmm. That is what has scientists scared and nervous. And we're seeing massive ice loss. You're going to see sea change, sea levels rising, things like that. And it's funny. I was just talking to my mom the other day. talking about like this poor kid just got nailed by a shark here in San Diego. And it just goes back to like
he's okay though, right?
He's in the hospital. Yeah, he's okay. But I mean, I was just there yesterday.
Which beach was it?
We were driving down there. Lucadia. Yeah, Encinitas. It was right where we had dinner. And if I go back to the very first episode, which, again, we were cutting our tusks, but I did talk about studies in sharks because the water is warming up, in the eastern U.S. and the western U.S. and other parts around the world. It's attracting fish closer to the beaches, and so sharks are coming in closer and closer. So you're starting to see a little bit more conflict there. But we know, we brought it up with the rattlesnakes. The chances of getting killed by a shark are really low.
You're more likely. To get killed by a cow.
Yeah.
So.
A cow.
Don't go in cow pastures. And I think sometimes too, the sharks, just since we're on that little tangent, there's more human people let me back that sentence up.
There's
water. More human non-people. What kind of people? Yeah. There's more people in the water, and there's more the number, our populations have expanded. Therefore, and we'd like to do more recreation things such as being in the water. So I think, and we're keeping better track now too. So that's, I think that might be some of what we see, why we see. But in general, most of the time they take a bite out of you and they're like, oh my gosh, you taste like McDonald's and Taco Bell. Oh
crap! No, McDonald's. No, McDonald's is good as a kid. You taste like a dumpster. It's bad. Yeah, they don't like it. They don't like us. All right, Ange, how many species of walrus are there?
There are. I used to play this game because I'm from Michigan. It's called Spades or Euchre. A lot of people don't know these games, but it's all about keeping books. And so a lot of times in Spades, you would call out your books to your partner ahead of time or after.
Yep.
So I'm going to say 2 and a possible.
Okay. Yeah, you knew this. You read it. Yeah, you're right.
Of course I knew it.
Yeah, I know you did.
But maybe 3, but the safest bet is 2 and a possible.
Yeah. So
I'll let you now that I got to use my euchre and spades analogy. I'll let you. For all my fellow Michigander fans, I don't know who they are. Maybe Corbin. Oh, he actually got married this past weekend. So his wife is from Michigan.
Oh, congrats, Corbin. Yeah, congrats.
So congratulations to him, and I know his lovely, lovely wife that puts up with him and all of his animals. She's from Michigan, so she probably knows about euchre and spades and books. So there's my 2 and a possible reference for her.
Okay. So you're right. So Otobenus rosmaris or rosmaris is the species names. Now, do you know this? Do you know what Otobendus means? I got to stump you sometimes.
I'm so stumped.
Good. Okay. Tooth walking seahorse.
I love it. Anything that goes back to horses, sign me up.
Yeah, tooth walking seahorse, and that's how they use their tusks. So they watched them. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's like the seahorse, like we did the sea dragons. I think they just kind of seahorse, whatever, a horse that lives in the sea. But you're right. The 2 subspecies, the Atlantic Pacific, is IUCN, and then the possible is the Laptev. But again, they think that population is kind of small and insignificant, I think is what I read.
Right. Well, they think it's potential. I mean, there's studies, of course, Chris and I come up in this a lot with subspecies, that certain studies go back and forth saying that it is actually a part of the Pacific subspecies. And then others say, but it's isolated where it's at. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to breed with any of the Pacifics because it basically can't. But I'm not sure how far apart their mitochondrial DNA is. And researchers estimate that the Laptev population is less than 5,000, whereas the Pacific is maybe around 200,000. And then the Atlantic population is only about 25,000.
Yeah, they're pretty small. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, since we haven't covered a pinniped before, so I had to do a little bit of digging with the evolution. It hasn't really been talked about. I will say the walrus evolution we don't know a lot about because hard to find the bones, but we'll get there. So pinnipeds, you're talking about seals, sea lions, and walruses. So there's really 2 competing theories. The first is that a bear-like creature became the eared walruses and seals. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then an otter-like animal evolved into the other seals. But if you do go back, they did have a common ancestor, and the Enlarctus, these scientific words, Enlarctos is the most common ancestor found and lived about 30 million years ago. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And when you say earless seals, like I was like, oh yeah, because you see seal lions, leopard seals, one we have to cover. Those guys are amazing. The elephant seals, when you think of a monk seal, right, or a harbor seal, they don't have the ears that these other ones do. So that's the difference between that. Now, they used to think these early species of walrus, again, another fun fact, thank you, Heidi, is there used to be walruses with 4 tusks.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I have to find a picture of it. But they used to hunt on land a little bit, and then they went to the water because it just got too hot.
So what would the 4 tusks be? Top and bottom, or 4 hanging out the top? So. Or
I think it was hanging out the top. I got to look. Yeah, I got to look. I'm
fascinated. Thank you, Heidi.
Now, here was a cool fact. Walruses used to live in tropical areas.
Really?
But then it just got too hot. Okay. Yeah, and then they moved north. And they, obviously to survive. What is crazy is their feet. Oh my God, Angie, these things are crazy looking. So the front flippers look like what you think of a flipper. So people that have seen walruses or pictures of walruses, like any other seal, or in their hands, there's the 2 flippers webbed. Their hind feet, so they're still a little bit back in evolution, but I'm looking at this picture, and I will put this on the show notes for sure. They are freaky looking. They're like 5 toes with fingernails, and they can use them to grasp. It looks like a mummy. I'm telling you, it looks like a mummy.
Yeah, I love it. Almost
bizarre.
Or I think it kind of almost looks like a gorilla's hand, if you will. Like
Yes.
But of course, like webbed and different, and I don't know. But you got to check it out. Yeah, please put those notes on the show. Put those photos on the show notes because it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and I was reading that a 28,000-year-old fossil was recently dredged up in San Francisco Bay. And so it was basically indicating that the Pacific walruses had ranged as far south as San Francisco during the last ice age.
Right. Yeah, that's important to remember. It's, the tropical locations. I don't think they were sunning themselves when it was 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I think they were that far south. And then as the ice receded and their prey items moved farther north, they followed. And the current walrus population that we have evolved to what they are today, about 2.5 million years. So,
wow.
The version we have now has been that way. So yeah, they've got a steep history.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I was reading between the Atlantic and Pacific subspecies. So, cause some people are like, oh, subspecies don't matter or whatever. We don't say that. But that basically, a gene flow analysis showed that their separation was about 500,000 to 750,000 years ago. So they've been separate for a long time.
Yeah, it's just it's like I go back to the blue whales because
that's such a long time. I don't think we ever are able to over the air or even as humans grasp
the time.
How long that is.
Yeah. It's geologically it's still like a blink, but it's so long. So like I was just because I was listening to giraffes again today. Just kind of get in the mood, for the podcast. And
sure, like do your stretches, do your vocal stretches.
Yeah, I was doing my mental, okay, how do we do the giraffes? So, and I was talking about
I watched football. I watched football and went for a run. That's how I got.
No, I was driving around. And so I'm listening to the giraffe episode and I'm like, it took them so long to get these huge necks and they're endangered or they're on the endangered species list now. Same thing with walruses, 2.5 million years. 30 million years of evolution. It breaks my heart.
It
just
does.
Thinking about these animals.
And then you look at these silly looking walrus toe pad flipper things. They're clearly not done evolving.
They're still going.
Yeah, they need like another 500,000 years to finish out whatever that flipper is going to look like. And so for us to either hunt them to extinction for their resources and or with global climate change to wipe them out, it would be really sad. But it is, with that being said, it is important to note that walruses are besides just being an iconic symbol of the Arctic, right? They really are culturally important to indigenous people. And for years, they've been critical for a lot of these Inuit populations to subsist, right?
No,
I mean, they hunt them and use them for oil, their ivory, their hides. So, and from in Alaska and Canada and Russia, their meat, their bone. I mean, they're using every piece of them. But yes, like you said, their population, due to this overhunting, was almost wiped them out. But governments got together, and throughout the years, there's been several regulations made. And we'll talk a little bit more of that towards the end of the podcast when we get into conservation of what actions are being taken. But yeah, that it would be, they are starting to recover. And of course, some of these Inuit cultures are still able to, depending on what country they originate from, they can still hunt certain small numbers that they think are sustainable to help them with their livelihood and because of their cultural traditions. And they're theoretically we want their populations to be in healthy numbers so those cultures can do what they've historically done for years. So they just have a really long history having a good economically important, or I don't know if economical is the right word. Cultural, positive impact on humans. And so luckily there's lots of good humans that are looking out for them and trying to work with them. But as you mentioned, global climate change is going to be a worldwide. It can't just be one, or it can't be 10 countries. No. It can't be a few people. It's going to have to be a worldwide movement in order to help, obviously, not only the walruses, but many, 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 many species.
Yes, for sure. And these, getting into how long they live, I know last week we talked about giraffes and it was like 20, 25 years. These walruses can live up to 40. Yeah. So long lifespan. Yeah. If we were walruses, well, at least me, I'd be dead.
Not me. I'd still be kicking it with my, I'd have another year left with my little weird flipper fingers.
Yeah. Now, some cool things. I know we were talking about tusks. So the male tusks are slightly longer and thicker. This is cool behavior. The bigger they are, the more respect they get.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to touch on that when we get to this.
Okay, so we'll talk about it.
But let's keep focusing on their tusks, because I think that's such one of the iconic parts about them.
And if you break off a tusk, you're a chump. So you're like you just fell off the totem.
Down the totem pole, my friend. That's interesting.
Yeah, the girls don't want you. Sorry, bud.
Well, and speaking of tusks and size, I was reading that both male and female tusks can reach a length of 1 meter.
Yeah, 3 feet. Yeah.
Like a meter. That's long. That's a lot.
They're huge.
They're huge.
Yeah.
And they can weigh up to 5.5 kgs or 12 pounds. But geez, Louise. But the average size is probably about half of that. Probably maybe half a meter, I guess, is the quote unquote average size.
Right. And the tusks are just so critical. I guess we're jumping a little bit to behavior, but stuff I was reading was like digging holes in ice, help them to climb. So we said the using them to move around. This was cool. I don't know if you read this. They sleep with their tusks in ice. They'll go and stick their tusks in ice to hold themselves while they sleep so they don't float off.
That's awesome. My son Xander needs one of those, because I tell you what, that 4.5-year-old, he moves around his bed so much. I don't even know what to do about it. He ends up upside down and backwards, and goodness gracious, the nights that he comes in and sleeps with me, it's like a workout. So I wish he had something like a tusk or something just to secure him in the same spot, for goodness sakes. But no, Chris, these tusks can break through 20 centimeters of ice. So
wow.
Yeah,
that's a lot. So this one I was excited to research, because you were a swimmer. They can swim up to, you ready? Okay, 21 miles per hour or 35 kilometers per hour.
That is fast.
That is pretty fast. Now, average is like 7 or 8 miles per hour.
I guess
so.
It's so bad to
made
have
me
stereotypes because you just think like, oh, because they're these big blubbery kind of things that they can't swim that fast. But wow,
sausages,
that's incredible.
Yeah. All right. So if you're in a pool with a walrus, how fast do you think the fastest human ever? How fast they can swim?
Oh man!
And you used to swim, so how fast do you think you swim?
Well, I wasn't a sprinter. I was more of an endurance swimmer.
Okay.
I did the 200 and the 500.
Yeah.
Sprinting wouldn't have been me. How fast? 15 miles per hour.
So you think you can almost outswim a walrus?
No,
you would think?
No, maybe like 12. I'm trying to think of me on my moped. Back in the day, I inherited this moped from my sister that I think mopeds usually only go like 30 miles an hour. And I think by the time I got it, this one went like 20, maybe like going downhill. Uphill, it was
Not
like
even
a 12.
Close. Not even close. The fastest human ever recorded is about 5 miles per hour.
Really?
Or 8. Yes, the sprinter is a French guy. He set the world record.
I guess that makes sense. So yeah, because you can run. So humans can run faster than they can swim.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
I guess that makes sense.
much faster.
Huh.
So if you're in a pool with a walrus, you better.
He's lapping you.
Yeah.
He is like, forget about it.
Hold
on to his cute little chubby weird toes, his back flippers, and then you'll be going faster than Oh man, my brain is not working tonight. What's the gold medal guy?
Usain Bolt?
No, the swimmer.
Oh, Michael Phelps.
Yeah, just hold on those chunky little flipper hind toes, and you'll be doing laps past Michael Phelps over and over, right?
Oh, easily.
Gosh, well,
easily.
Man, yeah, I didn't. Look, you're stumping me all over the place tonight. That's good.
Good. Little factoids. Little factoids. All right, and the final factoid is they can dive up to 90 meters, and then they can stay underwater for up to 30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes is very impressive.
Yeah.
However, I was reading that they obviously can dive deep, comparatively speaking. But they're not as deep of divers as a lot of the other pinnipeds.
Right.
But it's because of their food source. They don't need to go as deep, I suppose.
As deep, to find stuff. Now, my final factoid before we jump to some cool physiology, because I know you have some ready to go and I have some ready to go. All right, so a group of walruses, we already said it was kind of a herd, a pod, or the favorite. What do you think the favorite is? And you were watching this earlier today, so you might have seen it.
Oh, I was going to say Tuskers.
Tuskers is cool, but
that's like elephants or something, yeah.
So you were watching this while you were trying to prep for the podcast. What
YouTube videos of walruses?
What do they do on the screen that your husband loves to watch on a Sunday?
Oh, football.
Yeah, so a huddle. They call them a huddle.
A huddle.
Yeah, there you go.
Cute.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, they're all like on, if you watch these videos and stuff, or photos, they're all huddled together.
Yeah.
I mean, they're on top of each other.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
Funny.
What a great fact. I love that.
A huddle of walruses. All right. So you said something about sensory, right?
And speaking of senses, walruses have a great sense of hearing, and it's believed that they can hear calls up to a mile away. On the flip side, though, they have small eyes, and their sight isn't necessarily the best as far as seeing up close, and they rely more on their whiskers.
Yes,
for so cool. to feel things and sense things, and of course the depths deep down. Why would you really need good eyesight, anyways? But do you know what another word for whiskers are?
Bristles, stiff bristles. What I saw it. What was?
You got me. You've got a lot of letters in there that are correct. The B, R's, and the I's and S's, but it's vibrissae.
Oh,
with a V, with a V as in Victor. Vibrissae.
Yeah. Okay.
And that helps them. If anybody hasn't looked at the face of a walrus, Chris will put some cool photos up on our show notes, or of course you can just Google it. But their whiskers don't go necessarily out like a cat's. They go, they're thick and they kind of go down and out. And they use them to feel around on the ocean floor. And they're not like cat whiskers at all. They're like a mat of stiff bristles. So vibrasa. And once again, it gives them this kind of cartoonish like appearance with these whiskers. They can have 400 to 700 and 13 to 15 rows, reaching how long do you think?
12 inches.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. A foot.
Like that's my foot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My foot's a size 12. Like that is crazy long. And they're really thick. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really
now, oftentimes they, depending on this hunting and, they will get worn down and they'll be shorter if they're doing a lot of constant foraging. But I kind of went down the rabbit hole of whiskers this week, and I will not bore our audience with it. But recently in the physiology class, and I'm teaching now.
Yes. Yeah. You're past bones, right? Yeah.
We are past bones. We're on muscles, but we also did skin. And so with skin, the integumentary system comes hair, of course, is part of it.
Right.
And so I just really started thinking about like whiskers and how that is moved into the skin system and what that means, especially for animals that like our hair doesn't really do much for us. We get goosebumps, and of course our hair on our head makes us look pretty or stylish. Maybe it protects us from the sun, but whiskers and
eyebrows, think about it. Eyebrows, whenever you work out, like you said, you went for a run today, that sweat. So it serves a purpose. Right? Physiology keeps that sweat from really getting into your eyes because when that happens,
unless you're like me and you don't really have eyebrows. I do. They're blonde. They're blonde. So, but yeah,
I've got big bushy ones. My Slav in me, but yeah.
So, but with these whiskers, they're actually attached to muscles in the walrus in its face, and they are supplied with blood and nerves, making them really sensitive organs they're capable, Chris, of differentiating shapes that are basically less than 0.1 inches or 3 millimeters. Like how small is that? Thick and 2 millimeters wide. So they basically, they help them find their food and navigate the ocean floor.
It is really, the physiology was really cool. So their blubber is up to 6 inches thick in some areas, or 15 centimeters.
That's some real blubber there.
So, yes. And, obviously to survive in that cold, they need it. But in the winter, they said it could be up to like a third of their total body weight.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah. Now, the males, and I didn't have time to go down this rabbit hole, but they have the nodules around the neck called bosses. So they have like those bumps everywhere.
What
and
are
I
they
looked
made
like,
of?
what's the purpose of it? I don't know. I don't know. Connective tissue. I think what it is really to protect them when they fight, right? It just gives them more protection because they do slash each other with their tusks. But I tried to look it up and then I went, like, oh.
Right. So once again, if you're looking at a picture, we kind of talked about this last week in giraffes with their ossicones and their horns. If you see bumps all over a male's horns and even into his face and jowls of giraffe, that's not a sign that he's sick or disease or anything. That's just how they age and they have calcium. With giraffes, we know it's calcium deposits. But with walruses, you're saying these bumps, researchers don't really, it's just either connective tissue or more skin or blubber.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. And then,
but they don't necessarily know the purpose of it.
No. I looked for it and I couldn't find anything on it. They call them bosses, like a boss on a shield, the front part of it. So,
okay.
And I think that's what it is more probably to protect. It just makes sense. Again, if we think about evolution and how things develop, the males that have more of these are probably going to be able to survive and fights better, things like that. Cause they get bloody. I mean, but they have that thick skin and, their skin's up to 4 inches around the neck. Like it's really thick skin.
Right.
And that thick layer of blubber. So now this was the cool one. This was the factoid of the day that I just was like, wow.
I'm on pins and needles.
Yes,
what is it?
Yes. Okay. So in their throat, walruses have pharyngeal pouches on both sides of their esophagus that can fill up with air, can hold up to 13 gallons. 13 gallons.
What? 13 gallons?
50 liters of air.
I couldn't even finish a gallon of milk this week.
No, like, 13. 13. Well, they're huge. I mean, 4,000 pounds. But think about it. It is like a balloon that helps them keep their head up above water. So they just bob, and they have all this air in their throat that makes them bob, and they can sleep.
That is incredible. It doesn't like deflate. It doesn't like.
No. They're just in there floating along, and you see this walrus with this huge air pocket in their throat that keeps them floating. Like, that is so
Chris,
crazy.
I love physiology. Like, what in the world? What? We should name this podcast "What in the World Animals." That is so cool.
It is.
Wow.
That was the one I read. My eyes got big. I was like, are you kidding me?
And these are pharyngeal pockets, you say?
Yeah, pouches around the esophagus that they can like hold your breath. You know, like if anybody that floats in the pool, you inflate your lungs. They just inflate these sacs and then just hold it.
Man,
and then they just float along,
floating
just
and
bobbing along,
sleeping and chilling. Literally chilling because the water's so cold. But they have so much blubber that they're like happy and fine with it. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Now, the walruses do have two main predators: polar bears and killer whales. But I was reading, we did talk about the polar bears, especially on land. They don't get preyed on all that much, and they can harm or kill a polar bear with their tusks.
Sure.
In defense of themselves, they can. And then you talked about humans. I mean, obviously humans are a major problem with them, but the native people are allowed to hunt them, and they use every piece of it, like from those crazy toes.
Yeah, and it's very well restricted, and each country kind of has their own limits and boundaries and things like that.
Yeah. Now, the whiskers, is important because they're diets. So clam, shrimp, corals, sea cucumbers, other mollusks, crabs. So, man, they eat some good seafood.
I know.
I'm hungry. I'm gonna go eat. I'm gonna go get some clams, clam chowder, or a linguine with clams.
Oh yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, so you're right. They use these whiskers, and this is so funny. They seize their prey with their lips, and then they can suck out the mollusks with like a quick piston with their tongues. So they have like incredible suction. They go and they eat. Yum. There's one clam. There's one.
They do. They do this like piston tongue rapid movement with their mouth, and they create a vacuum. And their palate at the top of their mouth is uniquely vaulted to enable this suction as well. So once again, I guess if we went to an oyster bar or an all-you-can-eat clam bake, they would blow you out of the water.
Easily. They'd beat you every time if it was a competition. Yeah, because they eat up to 5% of their body weight a day, and somewhere like 5,000 to 6,000.
Yeah, 25 kilograms of small benthic organisms per day. 25 kigs. That's crazy. A lot of food.
Crazy. So, and just it's worth putting here because we get to behavior and repro because it's amazing stuff. Again, if they're eating 6,000 clams, one feeding, and you have this density of walruses on a coast somewhere because they can't go out and forage, that's why.
Hold on. Yeah. Time out. Did you say 6,000 clams in one feeding?
Yeah.
Okay, because I read each time a walrus dives down to eat, they can consume up to 60 clams.
I had 6,000.
But that might be like in a day or something.
Yeah. So I got it off.
Well, this says in a dive it's 60 clams, but maybe in a day it's
60
6,000.
clams would be nothing to a walrus. Yeah, like 60.
No, but just per dive.
Yeah, per dive.
Like not in a day. I don't know.
6,000 clams in a day, maybe. Yeah, in a feeding. Well, I think it's like that. And I think when I say 6,000 clams in a single feeding, that's like when they go out and forage for a while and then come back to sleep. It's not like they dive and eat 6,000 clams in 30 minutes. Like, that's insane. That's like
they would win the national hot dog eating contest.
Yeah, that's insane. But probably when they go out to forage, because you're going to get into behavior here in a minute, they will go out and eat like 5% of body weight and then come back and sleep and digest
Mm-hmm.
and go, oh, that was a good dinner. Oh, I want seafood now. God, I want seafood.
I know.
So what are some behaviors, Ange?
Yeah. Well, Chris, researchers definitely know a lot of parts about their behavior, but there still is a great deal to learn about them in their natural environment. Since they live in obviously a very cold weather and spend a lot of their time in their water, it's really tough for researchers to understand the full range of what they're doing every day, all day long. Now, more recently, researchers have started to use tracking devices and aerial surveillance, and of course, even observing walruses living under human care, so they can start to learn more about their physiology and why they do what they do in order to best help protect them.
Mm-hmm.
But so there's parts and pieces missing. But in general, we know that females spend more time on their ice opposed to males. Males will spend more time on the land, either on sandy or boulder beaches. They do migrate north during the summer and south during the winter, which is that's kind of what my mom, that's what my mom does. She plays the game very well.
Yeah. Snowbird.
Yes, she's a snowbird. So she's in Michigan in the summer, and then as the weather gets cold in Michigan, she drops down to Florida. And what these migrations do for the walruses is they ensure that they're basically on optimal ice. What we talked about, the Goldilocks of, is that what it is? The porridge, right? The Goldilocks, Three Little Bears.
Yeah. Yep. Goldilocks and Three Bears.
Yeah.
Yep.
The like Goldilocks of ice, right? So they want to follow that optimal ice. Regarding their social structure, walruses live in herds, or what was the fun word? Huddles or pods.
Yeah, huddles.
But they live in a hierarchical system based on, like Chris said, tusks, but also age, body size, and of course tusk length. And the other thing that's kind of unique about their herd, I guess, opposed as to some other species we've talked about, is they're very social and they spend most of their time with other walruses, but it's usually of the same sex. So when you see those big huddles, like you're going to answer at the end of the podcast, of how many were found at one point in time on whatever beach, the mystery is, I don't know the answer. So I'm going to stick around. Yeah.
It's not New Zealand.
It's not Florida, right? It's not San Francisco. We've already covered that. It's not Michigan. But yeah, so when you see that, that's typically going to be walruses of the same sex. So females stay with females and males will stay with males basically until it's breeding time. So and like you said, these groups or these herds or huddles can range from hundreds to thousands. And in the winter and summer, the males and females, they do come together in large groups for breeding purposes, picking out mates and things like that. And they will sometimes even pile on top of each other. And that's, I think, perhaps where the huddle has come from. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it comes in.
And species after my own heart, walruses are very vocal communicators. That's one of their main ways to communicate.
Yes. And
they communicate during mating season. And the mothers will communicate to the calves. They'll communicate to establish dominance. They have basically a series of grunts and barks they'll use depending on what situation it is. And let me see if I can pull up some walrus barks or grunts for everyone. So, Chris, that was E.T., the walrus, I love the name, practicing his vocalizations at the Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium. And there was a show of a large variety of the different sounds that they can make. And it was, we'll put the video on the show notes because it's just so cool. And you can hear the trainer cueing him and clearly shows that he's having a blast and enjoying himself and really wants to work with the keeper in order to probably earn his clams or mollusks or whatever treat she's feeding him. And it goes to show too, as a pinniped and just in general, from notes of people that have worked with walruses when they're under human care, is that they're extremely intelligent animals and very, very charismatic. Which, I mean, I can just tell in this video. I've obviously never worked with walruses or any pinnipeds for that matter. But you can just tell that I bet they'd be so fun to work with. Wow.
Yeah, I know. That'd be fun. Huh? Yeah, they're fun to watch, and I bet you they'd be fun to study. Now the repro part, I'm gonna just say this here before we started recording. Again, PG-13 moms and dads out there, so you can skip ahead a few minutes if you want. But this made me think of Corbin when we first did his show a few months back and talking about male anatomy. I was privy to a conversation that Angie was having with her husband, and I was laughing in the background because they were just going back and forth about male penises and stuff, and I was like, oh guys, come on, bedroom talk later. But it was the nerdiest science thing. It was hilarious. I wish I was recording.
Oh, it was so nerdy. It was so sciencey, and we were actually talking about vacuums.
There you go. Take off.
We're talking about baculums. And so baculum is the penile bone, and my husband and walruses have them. And a lot of mammals have them. Dogs, cats, bears, seals, sea lions, rodents, and chimpanzees, gorillas. Interestingly enough, humans don't have them, obviously. There's not a penile bone in a male penis, as well as cetaceans don't have them. And there's some other ones in there. But my husband was really surprised that a walrus had one, and he was telling me some stories about walruses that he has never worked with under human care, but some of his friends have, and he would see some of the training sessions. And anyways, he was just really surprised about the penile bone in the walrus, and due to the size of the walrus. Male anatomy, of his male anatomy, which is, I mean, he's a big guy. So it's still not the blue animal, and
it's still not the blue whale.
Yeah. No, it's still not the blue whale. And so, the baculum, the bone itself, can be up to 25 inches in length. And so, I don't know relative to, than the actual penis size, how much bigger that is. But yeah, so big. And it is the largest of any land mammal, both in size and the baculum is as far as size and then relative to body size. So my husband, though, so I just told him that he's watching football and relaxing. The kids are in bed, and I said, just do yourself a favor. It's super fascinating. Google baculum on a commercial break. Like don't miss any football, because football is a big priority in this house.
I just say what he said?
Don't miss any football.
Can I just say what he said? He's like,
I forgot what he said.
He's like, no, it's rated G. He's like, you're the researcher. Okay. When did this become my job? It was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, because I was talking about the evolution and why humans don't have them. And so anyways, I was just a fascinating read. And I was reading it while I was watching football during commercial breaks earlier today. And so wrapping all that up is, yes, a walrus has a baculum, but in Alaska, it's called an oocyst. Which refers to the male penile bone. And a lot of times they will be sold as trinkets or sometimes used as tools. And so, yeah, it could be potentially a running joke. I mean, I think you could probably find one on eBay for like $200 or whatever. However, once again, you hope that no walrus is harmed in making an oocyst, and I don't think it's a commodity these days. So, yes, so I do not support purchasing any walrus baculums for the record.
Yes.
However, sometimes, I think it can be like a kitschy thing if you go to certain countries or whatnot, but don't do it. It is interesting. And so, yes, but walruses in general are polygynous, meaning that one male will mate with many females. And a male doesn't reach such sexual maturity until 7 to 10 years old, but he probably won't have the right to breed and be successful at it until he's 15, Chris.
Yeah.
15.
Easily. Yeah, he's got to grow those tusks.
And females, too, they don't mature sexually until they're 5 to 7 years old. So we're talking an animal that lives to be 40 with a long generation interval.
Right.
And walruses are going to breed in January through April. And during both the winter and summer months, both males and females will gather together in the thousands to breed. So I guess technically that large herd that you're going to tell us about at the end of the podcast could have been males and females.
Mixed.
It could have been a mix, or it could have been just males or just females. But yeah, both of the sexes will congregate in what's called haul out sites, these sites where they haul out of the water, which are usually rocky or sandy beaches, and they pick mates. And yeah, they pick mates obviously based on dominance, tusk size, things like that. And the males will make some of those mating calls to attract a female. I don't know if that would work for me personally, but yeah, those real guttural kind of loud barks and mating calls, and they mark their territory that way. And then underwater, they make that whistle sound that you heard in the audio. And then thumping noises, like, I don't know what they thump with or how they thump. I couldn't find the answer to that, but they'll do that to get attention of the female. Like, hey, you.
Yeah.
And so but the lady, that's enough for the ladies. They're like, all right. And so they come towards the male, and then the less dominant males stay away. And when it does actually come to mating, of course, the strongest and the largest and the oldest male gets to mate with the females. There are tusk fights sometimes to establish who's going to breed with who. But when it is determined who's going to breed with who is going to breed with who, they actually breed in the water.
Yeah. And I want to jump in real quick because shout out to Jonathan Cowart. If you haven't listened to the interview about the manatee repro, it's episode 38. He is one of the few in the world that understand this, and he's almost done with his PhD. So it'll be Dr. Cowart here soon. Great guy. That was one of our committee meetings, one of the first committee meetings we had a couple years ago. We were talking about manatees mating in the water, and we were talking about the salt water having an effect on, sperm quality and survival.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because and like how that happens, and so just the mating, and we still obviously don't fully understand it because he's one of the few people on Earth that are studying it in manatees. And so imagine with walruses, not that many people are studying walruses either. So, you think about mating whales and dolphins and other species that are, aquatic mammals. So yeah, it's really interesting that they mate in water, and then how that whole process happens. Without.
Sure. Well, and with the other thing that's really interesting, Chris, is once they do mate in the water and they're successful at it, female walruses experience delayed embryo implantation.
Oh, okay.
And so the average gestation period for a female walrus is 15 months. However, she's actually only really pregnant for 330 days of that. So basically it's a 4 to 5 month delayed egg implantation. And what that means is that the sperm and egg have fertilized, and they've formed what's known as a blastula. So it's a multi-celled embryo, but it's suspended in development, and it just hangs out. And I think researchers don't fully understand it. But then somehow, after 4 or 5 months,
it's something hormonal,
hormonal or dietary maybe.
Right.
That triggers it. Dietary triggers or hormone, which then basically triggers it to then the embryo implants itself in the uterus like nothing happened, and it goes on for the next however many months that is. What's the math there? 10 months, 9 to 10 months almost, or whatever.
11. 330.
Yeah, to actually, Oh, see, look at you. Oh, you're so good with that quick math. That's why you get paid the big bucks, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, then the embryo goes on to develop, and it must have something to do with enough resources but because of that, then since they breed between January and April, the baby walrus is born the next year between April and June, which is approaching the summertime where I'm sure food is more plenty. How much do you think a walrus pup weighs?
Ooh, if Mama's 2,800, 100, well, horses are, okay, 300 pounds?
Not quite. 60 kilograms.
250? Okay, 60 kilograms, so that's
So about
2.2, 6, 12, am I doing my math?
150?
So yeah, 140, 150. I was going to say 150, but then I went
See,
high,
there was
so.
my math. I had some all right math there for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty big.
That's a big boy and girl.
And they know how to swim, and which is great because that helps the mom be able to protect them. And before the calves are weaned, they live with a herd of the females, so that's when they'll be in the all-female group. And they're very, very dependent on their mom. So their walruses are mama babies. I would like them. My boys are starting to not need me. No, just kidding. Xander,
they'll always need you. Yeah.
Xander's a mama's boy. Zach, I don't know. He is. He's 2, so it's all about like I can do it, and that's
yeah.
But he can get where he can snuggle down when he really needs to. He can But anyways, so yeah, they basically are with their moms for a long time. I think I'd have to look at. I'll be interested to see when we do other pinnipeds, but they're with their mom till about at least 3. So they're not even weaned till they're 3. Yeah. They're only learning to scavenge for food when they're like 2. So yeah,
that is a long time. That is a long time.
And because of that, so the mom is only going to produce a calf every 3 years. 1 calf every 3 years, if she's lucky, right? So yeah, not a high turnover rate. A lot of maternal investment, and it's probably the skill set of hunting the way that they do it, and then sucking the clams and all that. It probably takes the pup a while to learn that, which is maybe why they stay with them for so long.
No, we did talk about the conservation, vulnerable. And before we get to organizations, just real quick, I'm going to jump ahead with conservation tips. So the important thing, I think, is, again, global warming. So this week, and I thought last week we talked about the filters in your home, so check that out. This week, car or garage. So the Energy Star system, they're talking about give your car a break, combine trips when possible, use mass transit, walk or bike if you can. But leaving your car at home just 2 days a week will save up to 1,600 pounds of greenhouse gas emissions per year.
Wow.
So that's a huge, huge impact. So,
I cannot wait to tell that to John, because we are carpooling, him and I, to work 2 days a week.
Yep.
So
you're making an impact.
Yes, we're doing an impact. Also we're cheap, so
well, you have to be.
So it's making a global or a climate impact or an energy impact, but it's also helping save our an economic impact. So, wow, no, that's really good to know, and it really hasn't been hard. I mean, we have to plan better and organize better.
Yeah,
and he has to cut his day a little shorter than he would, and I have to make mine a little bit longer with the kids. And we basically hang outside the zoo. They're so wild, I don't even bring them in the zoo anymore.
They're
like,
just stick them in a cage. Right?
Yeah, they're just like so wild. So we try to hang out front, but even then they were like picking flowers the other day, and I'm like, oh geez. So, but yeah, so it's theoretically it's in a perfect world, it's slightly uncomfortable because we're all, tired from school and from work. And so we're ready to go home. Day, But I've just made it fun. I bring snacks. We play games. And I was just doing it. Like I said, I guess I didn't know more for the money. And just because I know it's the right thing to do, I didn't know that it actually that it made that huge impact.
1,600 pounds a year, and you're doing your justice. I'm going to start just walking to the gym. And
that's like half of a walrus, right?
Yeah. I know. Well, female. Yeah. So then other things is, make sure you maintain your car. It maximizes fuel efficiency. This is the big one. I know most people might have heard this before, but check your tire pressure. Under inflated tires, you get less.
Yeah, that's huge. Absolutely. And that's an easy one to do. Fill those bad boys up.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So who do we support for walruses?
Well, Chris, for conservation for walruses, not surprising, but there's not really a ton of individual conservation groups that focus just on walruses. I did find, of course, that the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, they are working to help the walrus as they realize that it's a keystone species in the Arctic marine system, and it really faces climate change, and that if something's not done to help the walrus, that it probably has the ability to go extinct, like many other marine species that depend on the Arctic and subarctic climates. And so the World Wildlife Fund, they have basically been recommending actions for walruses, including what the effects of industrial activities. We didn't really touch on that yet in the podcast today, but a lot of industrial activities and pollution, noise pollution, and obviously toxicants. Oil and gas has a big impact on their home range. They've also created like tools for mariners where they've made maps and posters for Canadian ships in the Arctic to help them identify and avoid marine mammals that might be migrating. And they're reducing shipping impacts in Greenland and working on reducing oil spills and risks of that. And since 2013, the World Wildlife Fund has basically trying to collect DNA samples from the walruses in the Laptev Sea to determine their relation to the Pacific and or Atlantic. So determining if it's a subspecies or not. So a lot of work by the World Wildlife Fund. You should love them on Facebook, not even like them, just straight up love them. And of course, go to they've got tons of information. Their website's fantastic.
Yes.
And if you follow them on the different social media sites, you get a lot, your feed will be pretty entertaining and interesting and awesome throughout the day. And secondly, I just want to give a shout out to Indianapolis Zoo.
There you go.
Yeah, really interesting. Just trying to look for different organizations doing different things for walruses in particular. A couple senior marine mammal trainers from the Indianapolis Zoo went ahead and back in May of 2017, they were able to travel to Anchorage, Alaska, these two senior keepers at the Indianapolis Zoo, and they got involved with the Walrus Conservation Consortium, which is a group of walrus professionals, walrus researchers. Let's again say that 5 times.
I know.
But from around the world, they meet there annually to discuss walrus care, management, research, and conservation. And so the keepers were there, and they were involved in the workshop, and they had the opportunity to meet with representatives from Alaska's Department of Fish and Game, from the U.S., and other wildlife services to try to talk about conservation funding and how to better understand the Pacific walrus and their habitats and what's happening there with global climate change. And the keepers were able to learn a lot of new ways to help advance their care for the walruses that live at the Indianapolis Zoo. To learn how to better care for the walruses that live at Indianapolis Zoo, they're named Aurora and Pakak.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just thought it was really awesome. And a lot of times, many zoos throughout, at least in the U.S., the AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, the accredited zoos, are taking a lot of steps towards conservation initiatives, both in the wild, but then also in their own backyards and trying to learn more about the animals in their care and how to better care for them. And sending 2 keepers to Alaska, man, I wish I was on that. I wish but yeah, it would be fun, and they got to learn a lot, and they brought a lot back to the zoo, and then they also were able to bring a lot to the Walrus Conservation Consortium there as well, because since they care for these animals on a daily basis, they understand a lot about their behavior too, right? So they can share that. And so, yeah, if you are in the Indianapolis area or somewhere nearby and happen to be around, definitely stop by the zoo, check out Aurora and Pakak, and, purchase something from their gift shop or donate to I think they have like a roundup program, which basically all the money goes to Alaska Sea Life Center to be used on walrus specific research and rehabilitation.
Cool.
Yeah. So I just think Indianapolis Zoo, good job looking out for walruses.
Yeah, I haven't been to that one yet. Next time I'm in Indy, I will definitely go by.
I haven't. I almost applied for a job there when I was back in Chicago, but I ended up staying in Chicago longer, which was awesome because I met John. So I'm as much as it seems like it would have been cool to work at in Minneapolis Zoo doing these cool things.
Thank God.
Yeah, I'm glad I stuck it out.
We would not be here today if you did that.
Right?
So thank you, Angie, for not doing that.
Yeah.
All right. So largest walrus herd is in Canada, occurs in the Fox Basin, and it's over 5,000 walrus is in a huddle. That's a lot of walrus. Big huddle in Canada. So there you go, 5,000 plus.
Wow, that's huge. That would be a sight to see.
A big herd. So, anyways, good pod. This was fun. Walruses were fun. I mean,
it was so fun. Oh yeah, I mean, from whiskers to baculums to.
Yes. I know. You and John go have your discussion. Do what you do.
I'm gonna see if he did his homework during the football commercials. Yeah,
that's pretty funny. So if you can, visit us on Patreon. We're gonna start kicking that up a little bit. Like us on Facebook. We actually got some a lot of love the last couple of weeks. Angie and I have been pushing that a little bit. Check us out on Facebook. We post on there all the time. The Instagram account will all pick back up. Twitter I just use to post when we post our episodes. So follow us on social media. But
request some animals, definitely.
Yes, we do. And need some animals. We have a ton, but we like to hear from you guys what you want to hear. So thanks, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Listen, learn, share. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.